And good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Fanatical Elves post-game show. Coming on a little late this evening, 9:49 Eastern. Was down in Cincinnati, thus don't have the voice tonight. So hopefully you're watching here on, uh, let's see, the X, Facebook, YouTube. Send me your comments. Send me your enthusiasm for what happened today. I'll try to respond to that. I was down at the game. I'll share a few photos here shortly. Went down with our colleague from the Fanatical Elves Network, Joel Cade, who has What the Elf Was That show. As we wrap up this Browns season tonight, what a great way for the Browns fans, for us Fanatical Elves to be excited about the end of the season with just a great game. No, it wasn't a great game by all standards, but every part of that team did something today that contributed to this Browns win. I know some of you are complaining about the Browns offense, and listen, I was there at the game, and I will be the first one. I think there were some comments. I didn't hear the full comments from Shador, but I think he was asked a little bit about his demeanor, his body language, and I even talked about it to Joel when we were there at the game, especially that first half. Shador just seemed really disengaged. I don't know what was going on. I was speculating at the time, well, hell, maybe he knows that his coach, Kevin Stefanski's fired after the game, so maybe he was not in it. He did talk a little bit, Shador did, about that and about kind of getting through that. He said he got into the halftime locker room and got some upbeat conversation from teammates. And listen, the Browns came out in that second half to start the second half and got a very important drive going offensively, got a field goal. And at the time, it's early in the second half, it meant a lot because it took that lead up a little bit. And, and then we saw what happened throughout the game. And that last series again, Shador and the offense got the ball at the end of the game with 2 minutes and 39 seconds and did some really good things. Got it in a position for Andre Schmitz. And let me tell you, Andre Schmitz is a Schmitz, great kid. I've mentioned this. I've had an opportunity to write for Northeast Ohio Sports Insiders and got a chance to cover the Browns in person for them. Was at the Green Bay game when the team won and was able to get down there to the locker room and listen and talk to some of these players like the kicker, Andre Schmitz. And at that point, it was week 3 of the season. And if you recall, if you're a Browns fan, you might remember that at the beginning of the year, Andre Schmitz missed 2 kicks and missed one at the very end of the game with a little bit over 2 minutes that probably would have helped the Browns win that game potentially. To do this again in this moment against Cincinnati in a really hostile environment down there. Cincinnati, got to give it up to the Bungles fans. It was very crowded, lots of hooting and hollering. So I was impressed with that just because it's the last game of the season. You have 2 teams that aren't really going anywhere. Now, obviously, for Browns fans, many of us traveled down to Cincinnati to see, hopefully, Myles Garrett break the record. And for a good chunk of that game, 80% of that game, it was in doubt. And Joel and I kept talking, Joel did, that it was this constant, the last 4 or 5 games, when teams go up against the Browns, everything is played to the right side. Everybody is going against um away from Myles. I was surprised they didn't line Myles up more often in different spots. They did toward the end, and I even said to Myles, or I said not to Myles, I said it to Joel, that in that last series where he did get the sack, um, that basically he was going to get it there. Now he didn't get it on the one where he lined up in the A gap as the linebacker, but on the next play he got it. So here's some. See if I can get these on here. Um, Let me see here. So oh, I see. Here is Joel and I at the game beforehand. Joel brought an amazing elf flag. So if you were watching the game We were in row 10 behind the goalposts where the Browns scored the touchdowns. And by the way, just the referees were just complete buffoons, idiots for doing what they did with the unsportsmanlike penalties. That was just crazy. Crazy. And then Schmitz had to make 48-yard field goals on extra points because of it. But, the Browns defense was really, that was spectacular because, you look at that game early, the Bengals had all the momentum. They got the touchdown, they got the ball back. They were looking, I think Shador had fumbled. And so they're looking to score, and they're right down inside the 20-yard line, 15-yard line. And Joe Schmo, Burrow, decides to, he throws it. Shelby Harris gets a tip. By the way, shout out to Shelby Harris. Man, what a great cat, man. This guy, watched him between plays. And maybe you caught this if you're watching on TV. I'm not sure what they would show you. Probably not. You think of Shelby Harris. You look at him when I was in the locker room and you talked to him several weeks ago. I mean, he's a big guy. These guys are all big, but to see him then talking to a couple of these Cincinnati Bengals players that he was going up against, he was tapping him on the head, but he's 6 inches shorter than these two other linemen from Cincinnati, but you could tell he was having a lot of fun. He was one who spoke very highly again of Coach Stefanski after the game. There's been a lot of speculation over the last several hours about what's going to happen, listening to various reports and even talking to our colleague here, Steve Gill, who has always had some inside information because he has some folks that he knows that have an ear to the Browns. There's been a lot of discussion with ownership over the last 24 to 48 hours about what's going on. And after the game, I was told via Steve that, what happened today in Cincinnati is good. Is it good just for Stefanski? Is it good are we talking about Shador? We're not sure exactly the good part. We're speculating that the good part is probably for Kevin Stefanski. Now, I know many of you hate Kevin Stefanski. I know many of you want to pardon with Kevin. And I'm not one to also, hold on one second. I'm trying to figure, okay, we're going to do this. I'm going to switch. So here's another picture. If you're watching us here on YouTube, Facebook, or the X, you'll see that I'm posting lovely photos from our game today. This is a photo. So we were in row 10 of the right behind the goalpost. You can see right there, got a good photo of Shador and the group. They're really good, really nice stadium. If you haven't been down to Cincinnati, it's enemy territory. They sing that stupid Who Day song. They talk about Cincinnati chili all day. They're annoying fans. They live in the jungle. They do everything. They copycat everything Cleveland Browns. I even was up in the stadium. Went to go see a good friend of mine, not a good friend, but a friend that works at the Bengals games, and before the game started, and had to go get to where he was, and he was like in the plaza level. Well, the plaza level is like the club level that we have in Cleveland Browns at Huntington Field, and their club level is almost identical. If you go in there, if you're familiar with the plaza levels, very nice. But I got escorted from a Bengals worker who walked me through the area so I wouldn't get things thrown at me, because there's a bunch of Bengals fans in there. But everything worked out fine. I got a lot of good steps in. So let me see here. I'm trying to pull up some of these. I don't know why some of these are going in, some of them are not. Oh, okay. Let's see. And okay, here's another photo. There's Myles. That was after. No, that was before. That was before the touchdown. No, that was before the 2-point conversion, which we stopped, which is a very big deal at the time because it allowed Cleveland then to drive the field and get the winning kick. So that was one of the players for the Bungles was hurt, I think, and so he went over there to help him. But then just another photo there. Let me see if I can remove the banner. So you guys can see that. I mean, it's not, it's a picture of the stadium, but cool spot. All right, so lots of things happened in this game. We'll talk about everything on the other side of the break. We'll be right back. Thank you for returning to the Fanatical Elves post game show, part of the Fanatical Elves Network, part of Fans First. We appreciate you watching us right now on YouTube. Where else are we at? Facebook, the X. Follow us, all those places at the Elves Network. Follow us on TikTok, our wonderful TikTok. We're gaining a following there, so please do that as well at the Elves Network. We're on Instagram. We're everywhere, folks. You can't miss a beat. And with the off season coming up now, there's going to be so much stuff in the news. We're just getting started. So the season is over, and that's the sad part because we still have more football with other teams, but it's not the same for Browns fans. We're gonna have to wait till next year. So there's a lot to talk about, to discuss. Well, that's what we do as Browns fans, and we'll continue to try to go at it, positively. If Kevin Stefanski comes back as the coach, I know some of you will be very, very pissed off. I get it. I mean, I'm not there with you all. I know it's 6 years, and he's lost a lot of games over the last several seasons. The last 2 years, 3-14 and 5-12, are not exactly the cream of the crop when it comes to coaching. Now, some of you still, and I even have my cousin Bill. Shout out to you, Bill. You still want to bring up the whole Coach of the Year stuff and the playoff. It's great. We've been to the playoffs twice. We've won one game, lost one. He was on his couch in a basement during the one game that, we beat Pittsburgh. But I know a lot of you are still like, want to talk about that. It's great. No, we're not 0-16. We're not 1-16 or whatever. And look, we beat two divisional opponents over the last 2 weeks. We beat the Squealers and we beat the Bungles. Stefanski has 16 wins and 20 losses against these teams, against the AFC North. So, I mean, there's a lot to, look at Stefanski and say, look, he's not exactly getting the job done, but he is doing some things. And the longer you stick with a coach or any sort of player or consistency, or Myles Garrett now going in the year 10, I think next year, I mean, those things will, work out. Now, I know some of you will say, well, it's just all these years are just a waste. And I'm not going to also say you're not exactly wrong, but we're Browns fans. And listen, live for the moments, live for these things. I mean, it was really amazing to be there again in the stadium today when Myles Garrett got that sack. There were not a bazillion Browns fans, but there were a lot of Browns fans in the stands. And the excitement when that happened was just thrilling. And the players were thrilled for Myles Garrett. I mean, for God's sakes, they carried him on his shoulders. They put him on their shoulders and carried him around the sideline. Now, I will point out, Zach Taylor, who's a freaking idiot, and Jamar Chase, who's a complete idiot. They're just, most of the Cincinnati Bungles are just complete morons, right? I mean, we all know this. I mean, they're snotty, they're stuck up, and what they did today and how they are trying to, talk about how the NFL and the refs stopped the game for Myles Garrett's accomplishment, and they shouldn't have, because the Bungles were in this drive and they had all the momentum and they had to slow down. Just kiss our asses. Kiss our ass. Kiss my ass. I mean, you guys are just a bunch of morons. You're just, and listening to all the other Bungles fans, Zach Taylor is not loved by Cincinnati fans. Believe me, I've heard it before. I heard it at the stadium today. Many Browns and Bengals fans talked about the people we were around were like, let's just trade coaches. We'll take Zach Taylor. I don't want anything to do with Zach Taylor right now. What he said about Myles Garrett's celebration, and Jamar Chase said about Myles Garrett's celebration, basically they both said they were annoyed that shouldn't have happened. Bull crap. It's an NFL historic moment, folks. You and I know that, Browns fans, but these knuckleheads down in Cincinnati, like stupid ass Sam Weiss. You don't live in Cleveland, you live in Cincinnati. Crap. This is what we deal with the people down there. As Joel Cade pointed out, that in the AFC North there really are only two teams, the Cleveland Browns and the Pittsburgh Squealers, because the Ratbirds are what the Browns used to be, and the Bengals are what the Browns, Paul Brown went down to Cincinnati to create a team after he got fired by Art Modell, right? And they have all the exact same colors. All of this is to get back at Cleveland and the Browns and at Art Modell. But so it was pretty cool. And then after the moment when Myles Garrett got the sack, the stadium, there was the here we go, Myles Garrett, right? Shouted all throughout the stadium. It was pretty pronounced. I don't know if you could hear that on the TV broadcast, but it was pretty cool. Pretty cool. And then for the Browns and Shador Sanders, was in his seventh start today, had only had 111 passing yards. But they did just enough, right? They didn't produce a touchdown, but they got two very important field goals. I know that doesn't sound like a lot, but considering what the Browns defense did today, my God, that was great. But for then the offense to settle in, drive down, and get the winning kick with no time left is a really big deal. And I know it's the last game of the season, and I know we'll all stop talking about this in a day, but it was a pretty cool moment. And I know this team sucks, and I know this team is 5-12, all this stuff, but hey, I thought we were going to be stuck on 3 wins, so hey, we got the 5. So, um, got to look at the bright side. So again, you'll see that we have our. I don't know if I can add. There we are. There's Joel and there's Johnny Cleveland, John Suchan. Look me up on the X. Follow us. Follow me, John Suchan. That'd be great. And that's Joel Cade. Follow the left guard. Great show. What the Elf Was That? If you haven't watched it or listened to it, tune in. He'll be on later this week. Let's see. Our colleague Steve Gill will have his Dog Pound South show. He did the pregame this morning. Thank you, Steve, for doing that. We had Rod Bloom coming up later this week with the Browns Blitz. There's a Gleam with Steve Hemmerich. Thank you, Steve, for letting us use your X page. Let's see what else. The defense was just outstanding today, and to get those 2 turnovers, Devin Bush, that was crazy. The interception was down in our end zone, and he took it back. That was fantastic. 97 yards, just some wild stuff there. And then it was definitely a fumble. It was funny to listen to Bengals fans complain about the fumble by the Bengals player. It was definitely fumbled. And a lot of people in the stands, they were like, oh, no, he was down. Like, no, he wasn't down. And then for the ability of our defenders there to recognize that the ball was loose and to take it back for a touchdown, very impressive. Coach Stefanski was very, very animated in his post-game conference or post-game conversation in the locker room with his players. And genuinely, you could see that and feel it and hear it in his voice. So props to Kevin Stefanski. It interests me when Shador said that, this game meant a lot to Kevin Stefanski himself, that he knew that it meant a lot to him. You really speculate, well, what the hell does that mean? What is Shador saying? Is he saying potentially that it was really important to Kevin because he wanted to go out on a win because he knows he's going to be fired? So I think we'll find out some things tomorrow. Tomorrow's Black Monday. I heard the Rashid Morris, or the coach for the Atlanta Falcons, was just fired. So some things starting to happen. I haven't even turned on the Steeler Ratbirds game, Squealers and Ratbirds. Anybody want to tell me what the score is on that one? That's all I got, folks. I hope that all of you have a very good rest of your evening. Enjoy a victory Monday. Enjoy it. Enjoy it, Browns fans. Enjoy the fact that this team looked like a team, and they played hard, and they've played tough over the last several weeks. I know, like, they lost that game to the Bills the other week. That was kind of a bummer. But even I know I even go back to the Chicago Bears game, which was, an onslaught. They weren't really in that game, but they got toasted. But there were a few moments in that game, even there. So hold your heads high, Browns fans. Wear your Browns gear tomorrow and Victory Monday. We'll see what happens with Kevin Stefanski and the rest of the players on this team. But it gave me hope listening and watching these guys and really fought to the very bitter end and just watch these guys interact between the plays, like when the cameras aren't on them. I was really paying attention to a lot of that today, and you can really see and you can sense that there is a camaraderie amongst this group of players. I think it has a lot to do with the fact that they are young. There's a lot of rookies on this team, and they were successful. I heard some stat that it's the first time some team this young has had their rookies lead, which says some interesting things. It doesn't mean that you're always successful, and they weren't, but they did win some games that they weren't supposed to. They beat Green Bay. They weren't supposed to do that. And honestly, I don't think that they were expected to win today. They were 7.5 point underdogs going down to play in Cincinnati, and they pulled off the win. So congratulations to the Cleveland Browns today as they beat Cincinnati. And congratulations, of course, to Myles Garrett. It was really cool to see Myles' family there. Myles Garrett's dad had this big ass camera taking photos. So that was all pretty cool. But until next time, we'll have a plethora of shows coming on tomorrow. Victory Monday shows. Catch Steve Gill's Dog Pound South show tomorrow. And I'll have my Johnny Cleveland show coming on tomorrow night, Stirring the Pot with Lou Marconi and myself as we break down what happened in this game, Myles Garrett, all the fun stuff, and see if we have any breaking news on Kevin Stefanski. If there is any news on Kevin Stefanski, we'll be the first to bring that news to you in the breaking news fashion. So everybody have a very good rest of your evening. Go Brownies. Here we go, Browns. Here we go. See y'all later. Good night.